This is great timing for the kindergarten consecration. So it's weeks like this. Look, those kids are going to be as kids should be in this space themselves. So I'm just going to talk louder, but I'm not going to ask them to not be who they are, which is 5 and 6-year-olds. So I promise, if anything gets lost in the words that I'm about to say, you can email me after Shabbat, and I will probably tell you that I did not write this down, but I'd be happy to share with you the core message. But kids and parents, be yourselves as you walk into this space. Weeks like this, weeks where the world sees itself, one another, as winning and losing, are weeks when I turn to my most cherished Jewish philosopher and psychologist, Dr. Erich Fromm. He lived from 1900 to 1980. One of the things he wrote when he was talking to those who were non-believers, people spent a lot of time attacking the idea of God. And while Dr. Fromm wasn't a deep theist, he didn't spend a lot of time defending the concept of an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God. He was a deeply committed Jew. So he would prefer that those who attack the idea of God intellectually spend their time not with God, but with people who see themselves as religious. And this is what he said. It is an error of the non-believers to focus on attacking the idea of God. Their real aim ought to be to challenge religionists to take their religion, and especially God and the concept of God, seriously. He said it was a mistake for atheists to attack God. If they wanted to make a difference in the world, they should have attacked religionists for not taking God and religion seriously enough. Here's what that attack would have looked like, according to Dr. Fromm. That would mean, he said, if you call yourself religious, to practice a spirit of brotherly love, truth, and justice. Hence, to become the most radical critics of present-day society. He wrote this in 1954. Don't attack the idea of God intellectually. I mean, you can if you want, but that's not going to change the world. What's going to change the world is to attack those who take or who claim to take God seriously, but in fact don't live with a serious divine impetus, will in the world. Because if you did take God and religion seriously, life would be brotherly love, truth, and justice. Love, truth, and justice. And in fact, it so happens the Torah itself has given us precisely the formula for taking God seriously, with the trifecta of love, truth, and justice as primary. And it was in this week's Parsha. Parashat Kedoshim, which begins, Daber el kol adat b'nei Yisrael, speak to the entire community of Israel, v'amarta alehem, and say to them, Kedoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy. Ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem, you shall be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy. If we want to take God seriously in this world, which means if we want to take religion seriously in this world, then we have been told by the Torah explicitly, Kedoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy because I am holy. And what you would expect to follow in the book of Leviticus, be holy, I am holy, is a long list of ways in which we are to sacrifice, separate ourselves, create distinctions on behalf of and for God. In fact, what follows in Parashat Kedoshim is not like what exists in the rest of the book of Leviticus. What follows is 43 distinct laws, for which 30 of them deal explicitly with how human beings treat one another. Here's what it means according to the Torah: to be Kedoshim, to be holy like God. It means honoring our parents. It means stopping on Shabbat once a week, but not just we ourselves stopping somehow, but the people who work for us in the world and with us, they need to stop too. We can't work people more than we ourselves work, the Torah says. Here's what it means to be holy. It means to take the corners of your fields during the harvest and leave all of the corners for the poor people to come and take from them when they need them. It means we may not exploit the people who work for us. We must pay them on the day that they work for us. It means we don't put a stumbling block before the blind. It means we don't curse the deaf. It means we don't judge without justice. It means there is to be no slander. It means lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. When we see somebody's life in danger, we have an obligation to step forward. We may not stand idly by. It means we can't hate our brothers and sisters in our hearts. It means we cannot take out revenge. And it means we don't hate in our hearts. It means we must get up and show respect for the elderly. It means the ger, the stranger who lives among us. So for the Torah, the stranger who lives among us is almost always some version of immigrant or asylum seeker or refugee. It means we are obligated by the Torah to love them like we love ourselves. This parsha, to be kadosh, to be holy, means to not afflict the stranger. And then one of the only times the Torah makes such a demand, v'ahavta lo kamocha. You have to love the stranger like you love yourself. That's not the only time this Parashat Kedoshim uses the word love. The other time it uses it is the most famous line of the Torah, I would venture to say, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You shall love your neighbor like you love yourself. Self-love? Yes. Love those who live around you? Yes. Love the stranger? The one who is fleeing to the space that you are in? Yes. Love them. If we want to challenge religion, like Dr. Fromm asked us to do, it would mean to practice a spirit, to demand a practice of brotherly love, truth, and justice. And this Parsha Kedoshim is one that focuses on love and truth and justice. So I'm going to encourage you all to read chapter 19 of Leviticus and to read it really, really carefully, because it's the center of the Torah, and it is what the rabbis called Gufei Torah. The essence of the entire Torah is found right in the middle. And it is in an odd place, Leviticus, where almost everything else is about sacrifice and priestly hierarchy. Stop, everybody. Just in case you think what it means to be religious is to pray all the time and kill animals on behalf of God, let me remind you in front of Kol Adat B'nai Yisrael that your job is love, truth, and justice. That is a Torah that I can get behind. The Rambam, Maimonides, once wrote, he said, regarding most men of religion, when he wrote this, the 12th century, he was talking about most men of religion. Regarding most men of religion who are possessed of authority, when something has a bearing on their authority, their piety leaves them. Does that sound familiar? It could be written any day, any week of any year. Regarding most men of religion who are possessed of authority, when something has a bearing on their authority, their piety leaves them. Parshat Kedoshim is a reminder to those men and women of authority who claim religion as the guiding path for life. It is a reminder that authority is not the ends. If you have authority as simply a means to a world with love and justice and truth. So this week is one with wins and losses, it seems. Everybody wants to talk about who's winning and who's losing. But what we are seeing is, in the name of religion, a world that is being filled with less love, less justice, and less truth. And it is hard to try and find a religious path amidst that. If you want to know how I really feel about Leviticus 19, well, let me put it in the words of Dr. Judith Houtman, one of our teachers. She said this. Here's what chapter 19 of Leviticus is, the one that I just quoted all of those laws to you from. In other words, she said, do not take advantage of vulnerable others, but rather love and cherish them. That is the grand message of Leviticus 19. Dr. Judith Houtman, who's a professor at JTS. And then she paraphrases my teacher, Dr. Eric Fromm. She says, to paraphrase Eric Fromm, a person must not say the world is created for me alone, but should recognize that others are not intended to be the means for him or her to achieve their ends. Leviticus 19 uplifts the dignity of every possible human being, but in particular those who see themselves on the other or find themselves on the other side of authority and power in which their agency is diminished. Leviticus 19 comes to protect that group of people in particular. You know what chapter 19 of Leviticus is? Chapter 19 of Leviticus is one of the only chapters in the Torah for which we ought to, should, and reclaim it as pro-life. What it means to be pro-life, if you want to follow the Bible, a biblical tradition, and then the rabbi's understanding of chapter 19 being Gufei Torah, the essential book of the Torah, the essential 37 verses of Torah, pro-life, it means to protect the vulnerable, those who find themselves on the other side of somebody else's authority, who simply wants to keep their authority because it is an end in and of itself. The Torah, once again, comes to say it cannot be an end in and of itself. Love and justice and truth are the ends in and of themselves. I want us to reclaim what it means to be pro-life from a Jewish and biblical point of view. We may disagree on the particulars of what that is, but our rabbinic tradition seems very clear with its Gufei Torah, with its elements of essence in Torah. To be pro-life is to take those whose lives are in jeopardy because of the authority of others and to lift them up. And in case you are wondering, they are each and every time and without exception talking about those who are already walking in this world, crawling. That is who we are. That is what Leviticus 19, Parashat Kedoshim, asks us to be, and that is who God asks us to be. God asks us to be kadosh, holy, like God. Love, truth, and justice, not the exception, the rule. Let us all strive to put that religion into the world and let it overflow into the lives of those who need it most. Shabbat Shalom.